Hi, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Riolo, and we are going to read an informational text today, a nonfiction book about space shuttles. It's called The Space Shuttle, and this is a book that is published by Pioneer Valley Books, and we have been given the rights to read these books until June. So please enjoy this book as many times as you want between now and then. Informational text or nonfiction books are true. So we're going to be learning about space shuttles in this book. I want you to think for a moment, what do you already know about space shuttles? Let's kind of activate your thinking and think about some things that you might see in this book or read about. Think about things that you already know about space shuttles. And if there's somebody in the room with you, go ahead and share one thing or two things that you know about space shuttles. Or you could think about some questions you might have. What's something you're wondering about space shuttles that hopefully we'll maybe read about in this book? So go ahead and pause the video and share just kind of what you're thinking right now with somebody. All right, welcome back. Well, I was thinking about, I know that space shuttles carry astronauts up into space. And I also know that there is a lot of equipment that goes with astronauts in space shuttles up to space. And something I was wondering is, if this is going to be a book that maybe shows us the different parts of the space shuttle, because I don't really know what all the parts are. I know there are a lot of pieces and a lot of equipment, but I just don't know what those things are called. So those were a question that I had and some of the things that I know about space shuttles. So in informational text, there is a really handy tool in the very back of a book. Not every informational text has this, but it's something I always flip to the back to see if there is a glossary in the back before I read. And the reason that I use this strategy is because it helps me to start learning about some of these really big words that we're going to be reading about. It helps me to know what they mean before I read them in the text. And so this is a strategy that might help you as a reader. We're going to review the words in the glossary together right now before we do our book preview. A glossary is a feature in nonfiction books that help to define some of the important vocabulary words that you're going to see in a book. So let's look at these words together. The first one is an astronaut. Think to yourself, do you know what an astronaut is? Let's read the definition together. A person who travels in space. Some of you probably already knew that. The next word is booster. And a booster is a rocket used to help lift the shuttle off the launching pad and into space. Okay, I think I've seen those boosters before. So it's a rocket used to help lift the shuttle off the launching pad. And we can see here, I'm thinking these right here are the boosters. And the word lift off is actually two words. So we call that a compound word, lift off. And we put it together, lift off. So let's think about the words lift and the word off. So what do you know about the word lift? And what do you know about the word off? Okay, let's see if when we put those together, it makes sense. When a rocket rises from the launching pad. So if you lift, you're rising. Off, you're leaving something. So in a rocket's case, it's leaving the launching pad. And the last word is orbit. And the definition of orbit is the path an object moves around a planet or the sun. The path an object moves around a planet or the sun. So orbit means to go around. All right, now that we are familiar with some of the words that we're going to see in bold print as we're reading the space shuttle today, let's go and do a book walk. So when we do our book walk, we're just activating our thinking. We're not focusing on the words yet. We're just kind of looking at the pictures, maybe looking at some of the features the book has. So again, this title of this nonfiction text is The Space Shuttle, and it's written by Michelle Dufresne. All right, so when we look at this first page, we can see a really cool photograph. A photograph is a real picture, and we can also see something over here called a caption. So a caption tells what's in the photograph. Let's read this caption. NASA began to use space shuttles for missions in 1981. They were retired from service at the end of their final flight on July 21st, 2011. And so we can see here they have a picture of a space shuttle. And I'm thinking back to our glossary, and I'm thinking about that word liftoff. And this is a great picture that's showing a liftoff. And when I look at the text, I can see the word liftoff on the page. And it really stands out. It's bold print. And the author does that for a reason. They put that word in bold print so that it notifies the reader that that word is defined in the glossary. So if you ever see a word that's bold print in a nonfiction text and you don't know what that word means, flip to the back and see if there's a glossary that will define it for you. All right, let's move on here. So now we can see that the rocket is starting to go up into the sky, and I see my bold printed word over here is boosters. And if we think back to the back, remember the boosters are those things that help to launch the rocket off of the pad. Okay, let's move along here. So now I can see a person inside of my spaceship. And do we remember what that person is called? Yes, they're called an astronaut. See if you can find the word astronaut over on our text. It's right here, astronauts. Good. And there's some of that equipment we were talking about. I'm sure they're using that for something that we'll read about in a little bit. Ooh, this is a really cool image of Earth, and it's looking down from the spaceship, and they're looking at Earth. And I think that's just a really cool picture. As we look over here, I want you to see if you can find some familiar words. See if you can find the word look and point to that word look. Right there, good job. See if you can find the word down, down. It's right there, very good. Last word, see if you can find the word they. And remember, there is no A in they. Good, right there. Those are just some of our high frequency words. A good strategy when you see those words, if you know a word, just read it. All right, let's flip through. So this is a really cool photograph. It shows some astronauts and they're working on something on this spaceship. I don't know what they're doing on that spaceship, but it's pretty cool. It has a lot of equipment on it. So I'm sure we'll find out what they're doing there. This is another feature that nonfiction texts sometimes have, and they're called labels. So labels show us what a little bit more closely what's in the picture. So we can see that this is a picture of a rocket ship, but these labels show us what we're looking at. So if we read these labels, crew cabin, and we point to here, payload bay doors, and that's right here, a delta wing, and that points to here. The engines are in the back, and then a vertical stabilizer is this right here. Is there anything that you're wondering when you look at this picture here? Anything that comes to your mind? I had something that surprised me when I looked at this picture for the first time. And that was that the crew cabin, so the crew are all the astronauts, they are in this tiny little part of this giant rocket ship. So they don't really have that much space in this big rocket ship. There's a lot of equipment and different engines and things that the rocket ship needs. And their cabin where they live and work and sleep is very small part of that. I thought that was very interesting. And then as we come back, as we come back, they're landing. That reminds me kind of how it looks when I land in an airplane, but they've got that cool parachute in the back. And why do you think they have that? What do you think that's helping them to do? Probably to slow down. That's what I was thinking. And then when we come to our very last page, we're at our glossary again. So let's flip back to the beginning, and I'd love for you to read along with me. And we're going to read the space shuttle. And if at any point you need to pause the video and do a little bit of thinking or wondering or talking or sharing, please feel free to do that, because we know that good readers, as we're reading, we're really thinking about our text and we're sharing the different thoughts that we have in our mind, or the questions that we have as we're reading. The Space Shuttle by Michelle Dufresne. Here is a space shuttle. The space shuttle is going up. This is called liftoff. NASA began to use space shuttles for missions in 1981. They were retired from service at the end of their final flight on July 21st, 2001. Rocket boosters help lift the space shuttle from the launching pad. Did anybody notice this right here? I'm thinking that might be the name of this space shuttle, the Discovery. The space shuttle orbits the Earth. And if I think about that word orbits, I know that that means it's going around. So the space shuttle is now going around the Earth. The astronauts sleep, eat, and work on board as the space shuttle orbits the Earth. The astronauts can look down at Earth as they orbit. So that's a really cool image from them looking down. The space shuttle can take astronauts to the International Space Station to work. Here are 2 astronauts working on the space station. Go ahead and pause the video and think about any questions you might have about your reading, or wonderings that you have, or share something that you have found is interesting or maybe is new learning to you. So pause the video and share some of that with somebody that you're sitting with. All right, welcome back. A question that I had was, is they're talking about this International Space Station. And I'm wondering if that's something that's separate from their space shuttle. So it seems to me like that there's the space shuttle, which is how they get there, but that this International Space Station is kind of a separate thing that's in space. And I know that the word international means that it's more than one nation, so that other countries might be using this International Space Station and sharing information. And so it makes me believe that this space station is separate from the space shuttle. Let's keep reading. Here are the parts of a space shuttle. And we already read those, so go ahead and take a moment to review those with yourself. Let's keep reading. The space shuttle can go into space and come back to Earth again and again and again. And that's the end of our book. All right. Boys and girls, thank you for reading this book with me, The Space Shuttle. And I challenge you to rewind the video, push pause, or excuse me, not pause, rewind the video, turn the volume down, and see if you can read this book on your own without help from me. If you need help from me, that's great. Go ahead and read through it again as many times as you want. And another challenge I have for you is maybe to do a little writing about our text. And so you could write down some of the questions that you have. You could write down some of the new learnings that you've had as we've read this book, The Space Shuttle. Another thing you might decide to do is you could flip to this page and pause the video and do your own drawing of a space shuttle and label the different parts of your space shuttle. So those are some ideas if you want to extend the learning from this book. I'll see you next time. Thank you for reading with me, and keep on reading. Till next time, bye.